Audiobook 3, Neighbors with Benefits. Part 1, The Arrival. Jaxon Raines had lived on floor 32 of Aurora Heights for 3 years, and in that time, he had perfected the art of casual existence. His penthouse apartment was a study in controlled masculinity, clean lines, muted colors, minimal personal effects. Everything about his space suggested a man passing through rather than settling in, despite the lease that proved otherwise. He liked it that way. Permanent felt heavy. Temporary felt like freedom. The morning Isla Monroe moved in next door, Jaxon was returning from his usual early workout in the tower's private gym. The corridor on floor 32 was typically silent at 7 in the morning, a sanctuary of polished marble and recessed lighting where neighbors rarely crossed paths. That morning, however, the hallway hummed with activity. 2 moving specialists maneuvered a velvet settee through apartment 32B's entrance. A third man directed traffic with the calm authority of someone accustomed to handling delicate, expensive things. Jaxon slowed his pace, towel draped around his neck, curiosity temporarily overriding his usual indifference to his neighbors' comings and goings. He had assumed 32B would remain vacant. The previous tenant, an elderly art collector who spent most of his time in Monaco, had moved out 6 months ago. The apartment had stayed empty, which suited Jaxon perfectly. Privacy was one of Aurora Heights' most valuable amenities, and an empty apartment next door was privacy guaranteed. That guarantee had apparently expired. "Careful with that corner," a woman's voice called from inside the apartment. The tone was polite, but firm, accustomed to being obeyed without raising volume. "The wall treatment is original. If it's damaged, it can't be replaced." Jaxon paused near his own door, key in hand, shameless in his eavesdropping. The voice was cultured, with the kind of precise diction that came from expensive education and constant public scrutiny. He knew that voice, or rather, he knew of the person it belonged to. Isla Monroe, socialite, philanthropist, recently divorced from tech entrepreneur Marcus Cross in what the tabloids had described as amicable but mysterious. Her name appeared regularly in society columns, always photographed at the right events, always with the right people, always looking effortlessly elegant. What she was doing moving into Aurora Heights instead of maintaining residence in one of the city's historic townhouses, Jaxon couldn't guess. Nor did he particularly care. Rich people moved for incomprehensible reasons all the time. Tax advantages, social positioning, boredom. He slid his key into the lock. "Excuse me." Jaxon turned. A woman stood in the hallway, framed by the morning light filtering through the floor's massive windows. She wore cream-colored linen that looked simultaneously casual and impossibly expensive. Her dark hair pulled back in a style that revealed delicate features and observant eyes. Even without makeup, even surrounded by moving boxes and furniture, She possessed the kind of composed beauty that belonged on magazine covers. Isla Monroe in person was more striking than any photograph suggested. Yes, Jaxon asked, his tone friendly but noncommittal. I apologize for the disruption, Isla said, moving closer. Her movements were graceful, economical. I know early morning noise isn't what anyone wants. We should be finished within a few hours. No problem, Jaxon replied easily. Welcome to floor 32. Thank you, she extended her hand. Isla Monroe. Jaxon Raines. Her handshake was firm, brief, professional. Her skin was soft. He noticed, then chose not to notice further. The former athlete, Isla said, and something flickered in her expression, recognition, assessment, perhaps mild interest. I've seen your interviews. You're very good at deflecting questions. Jaxon smiled. Occupational hazard. Journalists love asking questions athletes shouldn't answer. And now, Isla asked, what questions are you deflecting these days? Fewer. I'm in private investment now. Much more boring. I doubt that. The comment was light, almost throwaway, but her eyes held his a moment longer than necessary. Then she stepped back, returning to the safe territory of polite distance. I won't keep you. I'm sure you have places to be. Just my shower, Jaxon said. But thank you for the consideration. If you need anything, recommendations, building information, whatever, I'm in 32A. I'll remember that. Isla turned back toward her apartment, then paused. Actually, there is one thing. Name it. The building guide mentions a residents-only rooftop. Is it worth visiting? Or is it one of those amenities that sounds better than it is? Jaxon considered. The rooftop garden was one of Aurora Heights' best-kept secrets, a sprawling retreat with private cabanas, a glass-walled infinity pool, and views that made the city feel like a toy model. It was also rarely crowded. Most residents preferred their private terraces. It's worth it, he said, especially at sunset. Least crowded time is early morning, around 6. You'll practically have it to yourself. Isla's smile was small but genuine. Thank you, that's helpful. She disappeared back into her apartment, and Jaxon finally entered his own. The door closed behind him with a soft, expensive click. He dropped his gym bag, pulled off his shirt, and headed for the bathroom. He told himself he wasn't thinking about his new neighbor. He told himself her smile didn't matter. He was lying on both counts. The shower was long and hot, steam filling the marble bathroom until mirrors fogged and tension drained from his shoulders. Jaxon had learned years ago that physical exertion was the best remedy for restlessness. Running until his legs ached, lifting until his muscles burned, swimming until breathing became a conscious act. Anything to quiet the part of his mind that insisted on cataloging dissatisfaction. He had everything he was supposed to want. Financial security, a home in one of the city's most prestigious buildings, freedom to travel, to pursue interests, to live without obligation. Women found him attractive. That much had been clear since adolescence and became exponentially more obvious after professional success. Relationships came easily. They also ended easily, which was precisely how Jaxon preferred it. No mess, no pain, no mornings full of resentment disguised as coffee conversation. He had watched too many teammates destroy themselves over relationships that promised forever and delivered divorce. Had seen friends compromise careers for partners who left anyway. Had witnessed his own parents perform a 30-year marriage that resembled a business merger more than a love story. Jaxon had learned the lesson early. Emotional investment was a luxury he couldn't afford. So he kept things simple, honest but temporary, pleasurable but finite. It worked. It had always worked. He stepped out of the shower, toweled off, and dressed in clothes appropriate for a day of virtual meetings and market analysis. By the time he settled at his home office desk, the sounds from next door had faded. The movers had apparently finished. Isla Monroe was now officially his neighbor. Jaxon opened his laptop and pulled up market reports. He made it 15 minutes before his mind wandered. Over the next week, Jaxon and Isla developed the careful dance common to neighbors who wanted privacy, but couldn't avoid proximity. They passed each other in the hallway with polite nods, shared elevator rides in comfortable silence, exchanged brief pleasantries when their schedules coincided at the mailboxes in the lobby. Isla was respectful, quiet, and almost invisible despite living 15 feet away. She kept irregular hours, sometimes leaving early in elegant business attire, other times absent for days at a time. Jaxon assumed charity events, social obligations, whatever occupied people whose calendars revolved around appearances rather than deadlines. He did notice, though he pretended not to, that she never brought anyone home. No late-night visitors, no morning departures, no voices drifting through shared walls. Either Isla Monroe was exceptionally discreet, or she was as unattached as he was. Jaxon told himself it didn't matter either way. The first real conversation happened by accident. Jaxon was returning from a dinner meeting downtown, loosening his tie as he stepped off the elevator onto floor 32. It was nearly midnight, and he expected the hallway to be empty. Instead, Isla stood outside her door, phone pressed to her ear, expression tight with frustration. "I understand that," she was saying, voice controlled but cold. "What I don't understand is why I'm learning about this now, instead of 3 weeks ago, when decisions could still be made." Pause. "No, Marcus, that's not acceptable. You don't get to make unilateral choices about jointly owned property, and then inform me after the fact." Jaxon slowed, debating whether to proceed to his apartment or retreat to the elevator. Isla's gaze flicked toward him. She held up one finger, a request for patience, and turned slightly away. "We'll discuss this with lawyers present," Isla continued. I'm done negotiating with you directly. It clearly doesn't work. Another pause. Her jaw tightened. Good night, Marcus. She ended the call and closed her eyes briefly. A small gesture of exhaustion quickly suppressed. When she opened them again, her composure had returned, though Jaxon could see the effort it required. Sorry, Isla said. I didn't mean to turn the hallway into my personal drama. Ex-husband, Jaxon guessed. Isla's smile was thin. Is it that obvious? Only to anyone who's ever ended a relationship. You had the tone. The tone. Polite hostility. It's very specific. Jaxon moved closer, leaning against the wall between their doors. For what it's worth, you sounded like you won that round. There are no wins, Isla said quietly. Just degrees of loss. She seemed to catch herself, as if realizing she'd said something too honest. But thank you, and sorry again for the noise. Didn't bother me. I just got back myself. Isla glanced at his still loosened tie, the jacket slung over his shoulder. Late meeting. Dinner with investors. Half business, half performance art. That earned a genuine smile. I know that particular show. Everyone pretending the meal matters, when really it's all subtext and positioning. Exactly, Jaxon studied her. In the hallway's soft lighting, she looked younger, less curated, still beautiful, but more real. You look like you could use a drink. Isla hesitated. I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be, I'm offering. He pushed off the wall. I have an excellent bourbon, a decent view, and no interest in asking questions about your ex-husband. That might be the best offer I've had all week. Isla's expression shifted, something like relief mixed with curiosity. All right, one drink. Jaxon unlocked his door and held it open. Isla Monroe stepped inside, and something in the careful architecture of Jackson's controlled life shifted slightly off its foundation. He didn't notice yet, but he would. Jackson's apartment surprised Isla, though she was careful not to show it. She had expected the typical wealthy bachelor aesthetic, expensive, but impersonal, decorated by a professional who prioritized resale value over character. Instead, she found a space that felt lived in despite its elegance. Books stacked on the coffee table, actual books with worn spines and dog-eared pages. A vintage record player with a collection of jazz albums. Framed photographs that looked personal rather than decorative. Jaxon with teammates. Jaxon at what appeared to be a family gathering. Jaxon mid-laugh in some tropical location. The windows offered a western view of Elysium City. Lights stretching toward the horizon like a constellation map. Bourbon, Jaxon asked, moving to a bar cart near the windows. Please. He poured 2 glasses with the easy confidence of someone comfortable hosting. Isla accepted hers and took a small sip. The bourbon was smooth, expensive, perfectly balanced. This is lovely, Isla said, gesturing toward the view. One of the reasons I chose this unit. I'm not home much, but when I am, I like what I see. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city. Isla felt the day's tension beginning to ease. The phone call with Marcus had been infuriating, but not surprising. Their divorce had been amicable in public and complex in private, full of financial entanglements and unspoken resentments. Moving to Aurora Heights had been part of Isla's strategy for creating distance, for building a life that didn't revolve around Marcus's choices or their shared history. She hadn't expected to find that life next door to someone like Jaxon Raines. "Can I ask why you moved to Aurora Heights?" Jaxon asked, as if reading her thoughts. "You don't seem like the typical resident." "What's the typical resident?" "Someone who values privacy because they have something to hide. Or someone who likes being surrounded by other wealthy people." "You don't strike me as either." Isla considered how much to reveal. "I needed a reset. My previous residence had too many memories attached, too many people who knew me as half of a couple. Here, I'm just Isla Monroe. No context, no history. Clean slate," Jaxon said. "Exactly. I understand that." He refilled his glass. "That's part of why I like Aurora Heights too. Nobody asks about your past unless you offer it. Everyone's too busy protecting their own secrets." "Do you have many secrets?" Isla asked, the question lighter than she felt. Jackson's smile was enigmatic. "Fewer than most. I'm just careful about what I share." "That's a very diplomatic answer." "I've had practice." They moved to the living room, Isla settling on the leather sofa while Jaxon took the chair opposite. The conversation flowed easily: travel stories, observations about Aurora Heights' peculiar social ecosystem, mutual appreciation for the building's discretion. Isla found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. Jaxon was easy to talk to, intelligent without being performative, attractive without weaponizing it, though he was undeniably attractive. Isla had noticed that from their first meeting. Jaxon possessed the kind of physical presence that came from years of athletic discipline: broad shoulders, lean strength, movements that suggested controlled power. But it was his eyes that held her attention. Warm, observant, occasionally amused, as if he found the world entertaining rather than threatening. "Can I ask you something?" Isla said, emboldened slightly by bourbon and comfort. "Go ahead. Why are you single?" Jaxon laughed, genuinely surprised. "That's direct." "Sorry, too personal." "No, I appreciate directness. It's rare." He considered the question. "I'm single because I choose to be. Relationships require things I'm not interested in providing: constant emotional availability, long-term planning, compromise on fundamental life choices. I like my freedom. I'm honest about that with everyone I spend time with." "Everyone you spend time with," Isla repeated. "Meaning you're not celibate, just uncommitted." "That's one way to put it. What's another way?" "I enjoy intimacy without illusions. No promises I can't keep. No expectations I'll disappoint. Just honest connection for however long it lasts." Isla studied him over the rim of her glass. "That That sounds lonely. Sometimes, Jaxon admitted. But loneliness inside a failing relationship is worse. I've watched too many people torture themselves trying to make something work that was never going to. I'd rather be alone and honest than together and miserable. It was the most revealing thing he'd said all evening. Isla recognized the philosophy. She'd lived a version of it herself during the final year of her marriage, pretending compatibility while knowing the foundation had cracked irreparably. I understand that more than you might think, Isla said quietly. Their eyes met. Something unspoken passed between them, recognition, perhaps, or possibility. Isla set down her glass and stood. I should go. It's late, and you've been incredibly kind. Jaxon rose as well. Anytime, literally. We're neighbors. The commute is minimal. She smiled. Dangerous offer. I might actually take you up on it. I hope you do. He walked her to the door. In the threshold, Isla paused. Thank you, Jaxon. I needed this more than I realized. My bourbon or my company? Both. Their proximity felt suddenly charged. Isla was acutely aware of the space between them, small enough to cross, large enough to respect. For a moment, she thought about closing it, about seeing if the attraction she felt was reciprocated, about testing whether the easy conversation would translate into something more physical. Instead, she stepped back. Good night, Isla said. Good night, Isla. She crossed the hallway to her own door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. Only when she was alone did she allow herself to acknowledge the flutter of interest Jaxon Raines had awakened. It had been a long time since anyone made her feel that particular combination of curiosity and desire. Isla told herself it didn't mean anything. She wasn't sure she believed it. Part 2, the proposition. 3 days passed before they spoke again. Jaxon saw Isla in passing once in the lobby, once stepping onto the elevator as he stepped off. But their schedules didn't align for conversation. He told himself he wasn't disappointed. Told himself he wasn't listening for sounds from her apartment or timing his departures to potentially coincide with hers. He was doing both. The realization annoyed him. Jaxon had built his adult life on emotional discipline, on knowing exactly what he wanted and refusing to waste energy on anything else. Interest in a neighbor, particularly one who'd just escaped a complicated marriage, was exactly the kind of messy entanglement he avoided. Yet he kept thinking about the way Isla had looked in his living room, guard down, laughing at his story about a disastrous investor meeting. The intelligence in her questions, the vulnerability she'd shown before catching herself and retreating behind composure. She was dangerous precisely because she didn't seem dangerous. Friday evening, Jaxon returned from a workout to find Isla in the hallway, struggling with grocery bags and her apartment key. She'd wedged her phone between shoulder and ear, trying to manage everything simultaneously. Here, Jaxon said, appearing beside her. Let me. Isla looked up, relief crossing her features. She handed him 2 bags while maintaining her phone conversation. Yes, I understand the timeline. What I need is confirmation that the venue is actually available before we commit to the date. Pause. No, next month doesn't work. The donors expect spring, and spring means April or May, not June. Jaxon held the bags patiently while Isla unlocked her door. She gestured for him to follow her inside. Her apartment was still settling into personality, some rooms fully furnished, others containing only boxes. But what she had unpacked revealed taste that balanced classic elegance with unexpected touches. Modern art alongside antique furniture. Minimalist lighting fixtures in a room with ornate crown molding. Jaxon set the grocery bags on the kitchen counter. Thank you, Isla mouthed silently, still on the phone. She began unpacking groceries with practiced efficiency, sorting items while simultaneously managing what sounded like event planning crisis. Jaxon should have left, should have offered a wave and returned to his own apartment. Instead, he found himself helping unpack refrigerated items in the fridge. Pantry goods in the cabinet Isla indicated with pointing and nods. I appreciate your flexibility, Isla was saying, voice tight with controlled frustration. But flexibility only works when both parties are actually willing to bend. I'll email you a revised proposal by Monday. Yes, thank you. Goodbye. She ended the call and exhaled slowly. Rough day, Jaxon asked. Rough week. I'm planning a fundraiser for arts education, and apparently everyone involved has decided to make it as complicated as possible. She pulled a bottle of wine from one of the bags. Please tell me you don't have plans tonight. I don't have plans tonight. Would you like some? Plans, I mean. Involving this wine, probably some cheese, and definitely complaining about event planners. Jaxon smiled, sold. Isla opened the wine while Jaxon located glasses in her still mostly empty cabinets. They settled on her balcony, which offered a southern view complementing Jackson's western one. The evening was mild, city sounds drifting up from far below. This is nice, Jaxon said, meaning both the wine and the setting. It is. Isla leaned back in her chair, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. I wasn't sure about this place at first. It felt too impersonal, too much like hiding. But it's growing on me. Aurora Heights has that effect. It's anonymous enough to feel safe, but small enough to build community if you want it. Do you want community, I mean? Jaxon considered. Selected community. I'm friendly with a few residents. The concierge, Elias, is good for conversation. There's a couple on floor 28 who host interesting dinner parties, but mostly I keep to myself. That doesn't surprise me. No, Isla smiled. You have the energy of someone who's carefully constructed boundaries. Friendly, but not available. Open, but not vulnerable. That's fairly perceptive for someone who's known me less than 2 weeks. I've spent most of my adult life in rooms full of people performing versions of themselves. You learn to read subtext. And what's my subtext? You're someone who's been hurt and decided never to be hurt again. So you keep everything light, everything temporary, everything under control. Isla sipped her wine. I recognize it because I'm doing the same thing. The honesty was disarming. Jaxon found himself responding in kind. My last serious relationship ended 3 years ago. She wanted marriage, children, the whole traditional path. I didn't. We tried to compromise, but you can't really compromise on fundamental incompatibility. It ended badly. A lot of resentment, a lot of blame. I decided I was done trying to be someone I'm not. What made you realize you didn't want those things? I'm not sure I ever did want them. I just thought I was supposed to. Professional athlete narrative: work hard, win championships, settle down with a beautiful wife, produce beautiful children. But when I actually imagined that life in detail, I felt trapped. So I chose differently. Do you regret it? No, I regret hurting someone who deserved better. But I don't regret being honest about what I can offer. Isla was quiet for a moment. Marcus wanted me to be a certain kind of wife, supportive but not independent, visible but not outspoken, beautiful but not threatening. I tried for years to fit that shape. By the end, I didn't recognize myself. Is that why you left? Partially. Mostly it was the affair. Jackson's eyebrows rose. He cheated. With a colleague. Someone younger, more deferential, less complicated. Isla's voice was matter of fact, but Jaxon heard the hurt underneath. The irony is that I wasn't even that upset about the sex. I was upset about the dishonesty. If he'd told me he wasn't happy, we could have ended things with dignity. Instead, he lied for months. I'm sorry. Don't be. It freed me. Gave me permission to stop performing. She looked at Jaxon directly. Now I'm figuring out who I actually am when I'm not trying to be someone's ideal partner. Any discoveries so far? Isla's smile turned mischievous. I'm more selfish than I thought, and I'm okay with that. They talked through the evening, conversation flowing from serious to playful and back again. Jaxon found himself sharing stories he rarely told about the pressure of professional athletics, the isolation of being constantly watched, the relief of retirement. Isla matched his honesty with her own, describing the suffocation of her marriage, the freedom of divorce, the strange loneliness of being constantly surrounded by people who didn't really know her. By the time they finished the wine, the city lights had multiplied, and the temperature had dropped enough to raise goosebumps on Isla's arms. I should let you go, Isla said, though she didn't move. Probably. Jaxon didn't move either. The silence between them shifted, became charged. Jaxon was acutely aware of Isla's proximity, the way the breeze moved her hair, the curve of her neck in the ambient light. Attraction had been simmering since their first meeting. Now It felt closer to boiling. "Can I ask you something potentially inappropriate?" Isla said. "Please do." "When you said you enjoy intimacy without illusions, what exactly did you mean?" Jackson's pulse quickened. "I meant that I'm interested in connection with people who want the same things I do. Physical and emotional intimacy without long-term expectations. Honesty instead of games. Pleasure without promises. That sounds appealing." "Does it?" Isla held his gaze. "I'm not interested in another relationship. I'm not interested in being someone's girlfriend or working towards some imaginary future. But I am interested in feeling something again, in being wanted without being owned. That's very clear. I've learned that clarity prevents misunderstanding." She paused. "So I'm going to be extremely clear. I'm attracted to you, Jaxon. I have been since we met. And I think you're attracted to me. If I'm wrong, please say so now." "You're not wrong." "Then what are we doing about it?" The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Jaxon could think of several reasons to say no. They were neighbors. Complications were inevitable. Isla was recently divorced. Emotional baggage was guaranteed. Getting involved, even casually, risked disrupting the careful equilibrium of his life. But he was tired of saying no to things he actually wanted. "We could be honest," Jaxon said slowly, "about what this is and what it isn't. No expectations beyond what we explicitly agree to. No obligations. No performances. Just two adults who enjoy each other's company and want to see where that goes. Neighbors with benefits," Isla said, "if you want to call it that." "I do. It's accurate." She leaned forward slightly. "So we're clear. I'm not looking for romance. I'm not looking for someone to fix me or save me or complete me. I'm looking for someone who wants me as I am temporarily, without trying to turn it into something more. I can do that. Can you? Because in my experience, someone always catches feelings. Someone always wants more. Then we'll be careful. We'll check in. We'll stay honest." Isla studied him, searching for something, sincerity, perhaps, or reliability. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her. "All right," she said, "let's try it." "Now?" Jaxon asked. Isla smiled, and it was the first truly unguarded expression he'd seen from her. "Not tonight." Tonight was about establishing parameters. "If we're doing this, I want us both to be certain. Very rational. One of us should be." Jaxon stood, and Isla walked him to the door. In the threshold, he paused. "For the record," he said, "I'm already certain." "So am I." Isla's hand rested briefly on his chest, the touch light but deliberate. "But anticipation is part of the pleasure." "Good night, Jaxon." "Good night, Isla." He returned to his apartment, mind racing. What he'd just agreed to was either brilliantly simple or catastrophically stupid. Probably both. But as he poured himself a final drink and stood at his windows, looking at the city, Jaxon couldn't deny the feeling coursing through him. For the first time in years, He felt genuinely excited. Part 3, the agreement. They waited 5 days, not because either of them had doubts, but because Isla disappeared for a long weekend, a charity event in the Hamptons that required her presence and attention. She texted Jaxon before leaving, a simple message that managed to be both casual and intimate. Away until Tuesday. Don't find a new neighbor while I'm gone. Jaxon replied, no promises. 32B is prime real estate. The texting started then, sporadic, but consistent. Nothing heavy, nothing that demanded immediate response, just a thread of connection that made both of them smile at inconvenient moments. Isla sent photos from the event, her in a gown that should have been illegal, a sunset over the ocean, a plate of food with the caption, "Rich people eat the tiniest portions." Jaxon responded with glimpses of his weekend, a book he was reading, the view from his morning run, a bourbon he thought she'd appreciate. It was easy, effortless, exactly what both of them needed. Tuesday evening, Isla returned. Jaxon heard her door open around 8 o'clock. He was in his kitchen, preparing dinner pasta with vegetables, simple and efficient. He listened to the sounds of Isla settling back in. Luggage wheels on hardwood, the refrigerator opening, heels clicking across her floor, then silence as she presumably changed into something more comfortable. He debated texting her, debated simply walking over and knocking. Instead, he finished cooking, plated his dinner, and was carrying it to his dining table when his phone chimed. "You home?" Jaxon smiled. "Where else would I be?" "Good, I'm coming over." 3 minutes later, his doorbell rang. Isla stood in his doorway wearing leggings and an oversized sweater that somehow managed to look elegant. Her hair was loose, face free of makeup, and she was holding a bottle of wine. "I brought a hostess gift," she said. "I didn't know you were coming." "Neither did I until 5 minutes ago." "Can I come in anyway?" Jaxon stepped aside. Isla entered with the same confidence she'd shown the last time, but there was a new energy between them now. The conversation on her balcony had shifted something fundamental. They both knew what this was, what it could become. "Have you eaten?" Jaxon asked. "Not properly. Airport food doesn't count. I made too much pasta." "Interested?" "Very." They ate at his dining table, Isla describing the charity weekend with dry humor that made Jaxon laugh repeatedly. She had a gift for observation, for finding absurdity in situations others took seriously. The wealthy widow who drank too much and propositioned the bartender. The tech billionaire who gave a speech about philanthropy while wearing a watch worth more than most people's annual salary. The uncomfortable tension when Isla ran into one of Marcus's friends and had to perform politeness. "Did Marcus attend?" Jaxon asked. "No, thank God." But his absence was almost worse because everyone asked about him. "Where is he? How is he? Are we still in touch?" "I spent half the weekend explaining my divorce to people who were definitely going to gossip about it later. Sounds exhausting. It was, which is why I'm here instead of unpacking. Isla sipped her wine. I spent 3 days being the person everyone expects me to be. I don't want to do that tonight. Who do you want to be tonight? Myself, whatever that means. She held Jackson's gaze. With someone who doesn't need me to be anyone else. The air between them thickened. Jaxon set down his fork. Isla, yes. Are you sure about this? I've been sure since I suggested it. Are you? Yes. Then stop asking and kiss me. Jaxon stood, moved around the table, and pulled Isla to her feet. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the anticipation almost unbearable. Then Isla rose on her toes, closed the distance, and pressed her mouth to his. The kiss was electric. Jaxon had kissed plenty of women in his life, but this felt different. Isla kissed like someone reclaiming something stolen, hungry, deliberate, completely present. Her hands slid into his hair, and Jackson's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer. They broke apart only when breathing became necessary. Okay, Isla said, slightly breathless. That was worth waiting for. We can stop here, Jaxon said, even though stopping was the last thing he wanted. We don't have to rush. I don't want to stop. Do you? No. Then don't. Isla kissed him again, and this time there was no hesitation. Jaxon lifted her, and she wrapped her legs around his waist, laughing against his mouth as he carried her toward the bedroom. They barely made it, stopping in the hallway to press each other against walls, to remove clothing with increasing urgency, to explore skin and curve and muscle. By the time they reached the bed, they were half undressed and entirely consumed. What followed was intense, passionate, and surprisingly intimate. They learned each other's bodies with attention and curiosity, finding rhythms that worked, adjusting when something didn't. Isla was vocal about what she wanted, and Jaxon was attentive in providing it. There was laughter when coordination failed, and breathless silence when it didn't. Afterward, they lay tangled in sheets, skin cooling in the air-conditioned room. Well, Isla said eventually, that definitely works. Jaxon laughed, high praise. I could be more effusive if you prefer. That was amazing, incredible, life-changing. Stop. She propped herself up on one elbow, grinning. False modesty doesn't suit you. Neither does false humility, apparently. Isla traced a finger across his chest, the touch casual but possessive. I want to establish some ground rules. Now, you couldn't have done this before. Before I was operating on theory. Now I have data. She smiled at his expression. Rule 1, we're honest. If this stops working for either of us, we say so immediately. No fatting away, no ghosting, no passive-aggressive nonsense. Agreed. Rule 2, we're discreet. I don't want to be floor 32 gossip, and I'm guessing you don't either. Definitely not. Rule 3, no jealousy. If either of us meets someone else, someone who actually might lead to something real. We end this with grace. Jaxon considered that. The idea of Isla with someone else created an unpleasant tightness in his chest, but he ignored it. Jealousy was irrational when you'd explicitly agreed to no commitment. Makes sense, he said. Rule 4, we check in regularly. Make sure we're still on the same page. Any other rules? Isla's expression turned mischievous. We have really excellent sex as often as possible. I think I can manage that. She kissed him, slow and deep, then pulled back. I should go. I have an early meeting. You could stay and break the discretion rule on day 1. No, thank you. She slid out of bed and began gathering her scattered clothing. Jaxon watched, appreciating the unself-conscious way she moved. This is going to be interesting, he said. Isla paused at the bedroom door, fully dressed now, hair slightly wild. Interesting good or interesting bad? Too early to tell. Fair enough. She blew him a kiss. Lock the door behind me. Of course. Jaxon walked her to the entrance, kissed her once more, and watched her cross to her own apartment. She looked back before entering, smiled, and disappeared inside. Jaxon locked his door and leaned against it. What he'd just started was either the best decision he'd made in years or a massive miscalculation. Only time would tell which. But standing in his empty apartment, still feeling the ghost of Isla's touch, Jaxon couldn't bring himself to regret it. Not yet. Part 4, the rhythm. Over the following weeks, Jaxon and Isla developed a rhythm that worked remarkably well. They were careful, never arriving or leaving at the same time, never displaying public affection in common areas, maintaining the polite neighbor facade whenever others might observe. To the rest of floor 32, they were simply friendly adjacents who occasionally chatted in the hallway. Behind closed doors, they were something else entirely. They spent evenings on each other's balconies, talking about everything and nothing. Isla told stories about her charity work, about the complex politics of nonprofit fundraising, about the bizarre world of high society expectations. Jaxon shared his investment strategies, his observations about market psychology, his ongoing amusement at how seriously wealthy people took themselves. The sex was consistently excellent, sometimes slow and exploratory, other times urgent and intense. They learned what worked: Isla's preference for direct communication, Jaxon's attention to detail, their mutual appreciation for variety and experimentation. But what surprised both of them was how much they simply enjoyed each other's company outside of physical intimacy. Isla introduced Jaxon to the rooftop garden at dawn, and they began meeting there twice a week for coffee and sunrise. The space was always empty at that hour, allowing them privacy to be more than neighbors. They'd sit in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up, occasionally sharing observations, but mostly just being. Jaxon discovered that Isla was brilliant at strategy games chess, backgammon, even poker. They started playing on quiet evenings, small stakes, but serious competition. Isla was ruthless and unapologetic about winning. "You're not letting me win," she said, after taking a particularly large pot during poker night. "Why would I? Some men do. They think it's chivalrous or attractive. It's condescending." "Exactly." Isla shuffled the cards. "I like that you see me as an equal. In cards or in general?" "Both." It was during these in-between moments, not quite dating, not quite casual, that Jaxon felt most uncertain about their arrangement. The rules they'd established were clear, but the execution was becoming complicated. He looked forward to seeing Isla, thought about her at random times, found himself irritated when her schedule kept her away for multiple days. None of that was supposed to happen. One evening, about 6 weeks into their arrangement, they were in Isla's apartment watching a documentary about art fraud. Isla was curled against Jackson's side, her head on his shoulder, their fingers loosely intertwined. "This is nice," Isla murmured during a particularly slow section. "The documentary or the cuddling?" "Both, though cuddling feels dangerously close to relationship behavior." Jaxon tensed slightly. "Does that bother you?" "I don't know yet. Does it bother you?" "I don't know either." They were quiet for a moment, both pretending to watch the screen while actually processing the conversation. "We should probably check in," Isla said. "That was rule 4. "Are you happy with how this is going?" Jaxon asked. "Yes, are you?" "Yes." "Do you want to change anything?" "No, do you?" "No." Another pause. "So we're good," Jaxon said. "We're good." But Isla's voice carried a note of uncertainty that matched his own. The documentary ended, and Isla shifted position to look at Jaxon directly. "Can I tell you something without you reading too much into it? Maybe try me. I really like you. As a person, not just as a," she gestured vaguely. "Whatever this is, you're one of the few people in my life who doesn't want something from me, who doesn't need me to perform or provide or be anyone except exactly who I am. That's rare." "I feel the same way about you," Jaxon admitted. "You don't treat me like a former athlete or an investment opportunity. You just treat me like Jaxon. Is that a problem?" "It shouldn't be. But," Jaxon considered his words carefully, "but liking someone as a person makes it harder to keep things casual. Emotional investment is how casual becomes complicated. Are you emotionally invested?" "Are you?" Isla smiled slightly. "You're very good at deflecting questions. I think I mentioned that before. I learned from watching your interviews. You're better at it than I am." "That doesn't answer the question." "Neither did you." They looked at each other, both recognizing the stalemate. Finally, Isla laughed. "We're being ridiculous. Two adults terrified to admit we might actually care about each other beyond physical attraction. When you put it that way, it does sound ridiculous. So let's be honest. Yes, I'm emotionally invested. I care about you. I value your company. I think about you when you're not around. None of that changes what I want or don't want from this arrangement, but it's the truth. The admission settled over Jaxon like relief and anxiety in equal measure. Same, all of it, which terrifies me because emotional investment is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Why? Because every time I've let myself care, it's ended badly. Someone gets hurt. Someone feels trapped. Someone realizes they wanted something different all along. That's assuming this has to end badly, doesn't it? We explicitly agreed this was temporary. Isla was quiet for a long moment. Maybe temporary doesn't have to mean doomed. Maybe it just means we're living in the present instead of planning for a future neither of us can predict. It was the most philosophical Jaxon had heard her be about their situation. He wanted to believe she was right, wanted to accept that caring about someone didn't automatically lead to disaster. But belief required trust, and trust required vulnerability. And vulnerability was still the one thing Jaxon couldn't quite manage. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. Neither do I, so let's figure it out together. Isla kissed him then, soft and reassuring, and Jaxon let himself sink into it. Let himself feel without analyzing. Let himself be present without calculating consequences. It felt dangerous. It felt necessary. The first crack in their careful arrangement appeared 3 weeks later. Jaxon was at a private investment dinner downtown, the kind of event where business was discussed over expensive wine and carefully curated cuisine. He'd brought his business partner, a sharp woman named Claire, who handled the financial modeling while Jaxon managed relationships. The evening was proceeding normally until Isla walked in. She was with a group, 2 other women, and a man Jaxon vaguely recognized from charity circuit coverage. Isla looked stunning in a navy dress that made her look simultaneously professional and devastating. She saw Jaxon immediately, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, pleasure, uncertainty. They'd agreed to be discreet. That meant polite acknowledgement in public, nothing more. Isla offered a small smile and a subtle nod. Jaxon returned it. Then she turned her attention to her companions and moved to a table on the opposite side of the restaurant. Jaxon tried to focus on his own dinner conversation, but his attention kept drifting. He watched Isla engage with her group, animated and charming, drawing laughter and attention effortlessly. The man she was with, tall, polished, clearly wealthy, sat close to her. Too close. His hand rested briefly on her lower back when they stood to greet another arrival. Jaxon felt jealousy spike hot and irrational in his chest. He had no right to that feeling. They weren't exclusive. They weren't committed. Isla was free to have dinner with whomever she chose, but knowing that intellectually didn't stop the visceral reaction. Jaxon, Claire's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts. You okay? Fine, sorry. What were you saying? Claire followed his gaze across the restaurant, saw Isla, and her expression turned knowing. Friend of yours. Neighbor. Uh-huh, neighbor you're sleeping with. Claire, relax. I don't care. I'm just observing that you've been staring at her for 5 minutes instead of listening to Michael's extremely boring market analysis. Michael, their dinner companion, looked mildly offended. Sorry, Jaxon said again. I'm distracted tonight. Clearly, Claire sipped her wine. If she's just a neighbor, why do you look like you want to murder the guy she's with? I don't, Jaxon stopped. There was no point lying to Claire. She'd known him too long and was too perceptive. It's complicated. Isn't it always? Claire smiled sympathetically. For what it's worth, she's been glancing over here too. Whatever this is, it's not one-sided. That observation didn't help as much as it should have. The dinner continued, but Jackson's attention remained divided. He forced himself to stop watching Isla's table, to engage with the conversation, to perform the social role expected of him. But awareness of her presence hummed beneath everything else, a low-grade distraction he couldn't shake. Toward the end of the evening, Isla's group stood to leave. She walked past Jackson's table on the way out, close enough that he caught her perfume, but she didn't stop or speak. The man she was with had his hand on her back again. Jaxon finished his bourbon in one swallow. You've got it bad, Claire observed. I really don't. Keep telling yourself that. Jaxon returned to Aurora Heights around 11, frustrated and unsettled. The rational part of his brain knew his jealousy was absurd. Isla was allowed to have dinner with other men. She was allowed to be touched by other men. They had no agreement that prevented it, but rationality and emotion rarely aligned. He was unlocking his apartment when Isla's door opened. She stood in the threshold, still in her navy dress, expression unreadable. Can we talk? She asked. Jaxon nodded. Your place or mine? Yours. They entered his apartment in silence. Jaxon poured himself another bourbon, offered one to Isla, but she declined. They faced each other in the living room, the air thick with unspoken tension. Who was he? Jaxon asked before he could stop himself. A donor. His family foundation supports arts education. We were discussing funding for the next fiscal year. He touched you a lot for a donor meeting. Isla's eyebrows rose. Are you seriously doing this right now? Doing what? Acting jealous, acting possessive, we agreed. I know what we agreed, Jaxon interrupted. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I'm saying watching you with him made me feel things I didn't expect. What things? Jealousy, possessiveness, the urge to walk over there and make it very clear you weren't available. But I am available. That's the whole point of our arrangement. I know. So what are you actually upset about? Jaxon set down his glass. I'm upset that I care. I'm upset that this, he gestured between them, has become more than I intended. I'm upset that the rules we made aren't working the way they're supposed to. Isla was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was careful. What do you want, Jaxon? I don't know. That's not good enough. You're upset, you're jealous, but you don't know what you actually want. That's not fair to either of us. Fair, you want to talk about fair. Jaxon felt his frustration rising. I was honest from the beginning. I told you I don't do relationships. I told you I keep things casual. And now I'm developing feelings I specifically tried to avoid, and you're acting like that's my fault. I'm not acting like it's your fault. I'm asking you to be clear about what's happening so we can figure out how to handle it. What's happening is I'm breaking my own rules. What's happening is I want exclusivity, even though I have no right to ask for it. What's happening is this arrangement is becoming exactly the kind of complication I spent years avoiding. Isla's expression hardened. Then maybe we should end it. The suggestion hit Jaxon like cold water. Is that what you want? I don't know. But I'm not interested in being resented. I'm not interested in you blaming me for your inability to maintain emotional distance when that was never my responsibility. I'm not blaming you. Yes, you are. You're upset that you have feelings, so you're making it about me having dinner with someone else. That's deflection, Jaxon, and it's not fair. She was right. Jaxon knew she was right, but admitting it meant confronting things he didn't want to confront. I don't want to end this, he said quietly. Neither do I, but I also can't do this if you're going to punish me every time I interact with another man. I'm not trying to punish you. Then what are you trying to do? I'm trying to figure out how to want you the way I do, without it destroying everything I've built. Isla's anger softened slightly. She moved closer, close enough to touch, though she didn't. What have you built, Jaxon? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like walls. Safety, maybe, but also loneliness. And what's wrong with safety? Nothing, unless it costs you everything else. They stood in tense silence, the distance between them feeling infinite, despite the physical proximity. Finally, Isla sighed. I need to go. We're both too raw for this conversation right now. Isla, I mean it. We'll talk when we've both had time to think. She moved toward the door, then paused. For the record, Thomas, the donor, is married, happily, with 3 children. He touches everyone. It's a networking thing, not a flirtation thing. You would have known that if you'd asked instead of assuming. The door closed behind her, leaving Jaxon alone with his bourbon and his mistakes. He'd handled that badly. Let jealousy override reason. Projected his own fears onto Isla's innocent actions. But beneath the self-recrimination lived an uncomfortable truth. His feelings for Isla had grown beyond what casual allowed. He didn't just desire her. He cared about her, missed her when she was gone, wanted her happiness even when it didn't directly involve him. Those weren't casual feelings. Those were relationship feelings. And Jaxon had absolutely no idea what to do about them. Part 5. The Fracture. They didn't speak for 3 days. Jaxon considered reaching out multiple times, texting an apology, knocking on her door, leaving a note. But each time he hesitated. What would he say? That he was sorry for being jealous, that he wanted to continue their arrangement, but with different parameters, that he was falling for her despite explicitly agreeing not to. All of it was true. None of it felt sayable. On the 4th day, Isla texted, "We need to talk. My place. Tonight at 8. Jaxon replied immediately, "I'll be there." He spent the intervening hours alternating between rehearsing what to say and telling himself to just listen. Isla deserved better than his defensive deflection. She deserved honesty, even if honesty meant admitting he was terrified. At exactly 8 o'clock, Jaxon knocked on Isla's door. She answered looking tired, her usual polish slightly dimmed. She wore comfortable clothes, leggings, and a sweater, and her hair was pulled into a messy bun. Somehow, she was still beautiful. "Come in," Isla said, stepping aside. Her apartment smelled like jasmine tea and vanilla candles. She'd been cleaning, surfaces gleamed, and everything looked precisely arranged. Isla cleaned when she was stressed. Jaxon had learned that about her over their weeks together. They settled in her living room, sitting on opposite ends of the sofa, close but not touching. "I've been thinking," Isla began, "about what happened, about what you said and what I said, about what this has become. So have I. Let me go first, please." Jaxon nodded. Isla took a breath. "I was angry the other night because I felt ambushed. We had rules, clear boundaries, and suddenly you were changing them without discussion. That's not fair." But she held up a hand when Jaxon started to speak. "I also wasn't being entirely honest. Not with you, and not with myself." "About what?" "About my own feelings. I told you I didn't want a relationship. I told you I was happy with casual. But the truth is, this stopped being casual for me weeks ago. Maybe it was never really casual. I just wanted it to be because that felt safer." Jackson's heart rate increased. "Isla, I'm not finished. I need to say all of this before I lose my nerve." She met his eyes. "I have feelings for you, Jaxon. Real feelings. The kind that make me check my phone too often and get disappointed when you're busy. The kind that make me want to tell you about my day, even when nothing interesting happened. The kind that make seeing you with someone else feel unbearable, even though I have no claim to exclusivity." "You do have a claim," Jaxon said quietly. "Do I? Because our agreement says otherwise. Then maybe our agreement needs to change." Isla looked at him carefully. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I was an idiot the other night. I was jealous and defensive, and I took that out on you. I'm sorry. But I was also honest. This has become more than I intended, more than I know how to handle. I have feelings for you too, strong feelings, feelings that terrify me because they're exactly what I said I didn't want. But you do want them." I want you, however I can have you, whatever that looks like. Isla was quiet for a long moment, processing. When she spoke, her voice was careful. I need you to be more specific. Are you saying you want a relationship? Actual commitment, exclusivity, the whole thing? Jaxon hesitated. The word relationship still carried weight he wasn't sure he could bear. But the alternative, losing Isla entirely, felt worse. I don't know what I'm ready for, he admitted. But I know I'm not ready to lose this, to lose you. So yes, I want exclusivity. I want to know that what we have is just ours. Beyond that, he trailed off, uncertain. Beyond that, you're still terrified of commitment. Yes, at least you're honest about it. Isla drew her knees up to her chest, a gesture of self-protection. Here's my position. I'm not interested in being someone's maybe. I spent years in a marriage where I was never quite enough, never quite right. I'm not doing that again. If we're going to be together, really together, I need to know you're all in. Not perfect, not fearless, but genuinely trying. I can try, Jaxon said. Can you? Because trying means being vulnerable. It means letting me in even when it's uncomfortable. It means working through conflict instead of retreating into self-protection. It means risking exactly the kind of hurt you've spent years avoiding. I know. I'm not sure you do. I think you want the benefits of a relationship without the actual work of one. And I can't do that, Jaxon. I won't. Her words stung because they were accurate. Jaxon did want safety and intimacy simultaneously, the impossible combination of connection without risk. Tell me what you need, he said. Tell me what trying actually looks like, and I'll do it. Isla studied him, searching for something: sincerity, commitment, the capacity for change. I need honesty. Complete honesty, even when it's hard. I need you to communicate instead of retreating when things get difficult. I need you to let me matter to you publicly, not just behind closed doors. And I need you to stop treating this like a temporary arrangement you're enduring until something better comes along. This is better. You are better. Better than anything I've had in years. Then act like it. They looked at each other across the small distance of the sofa. The gap felt symbolic, crossable, but requiring effort. Jaxon moved first. He closed the distance between them, taking Isla's hands in his. I'm terrified, he admitted. I'm terrified I'll hurt you. I'm terrified you'll realize I'm not worth the effort. I'm terrified I'll fail at this the way I've failed at every other relationship. But I'm more terrified of losing you. So yes, I'll try. I'll be honest and communicative and public about how much you matter. I'll work on the vulnerability thing. I'll stop treating this like it's temporary. And when I inevitably screw up, because I will, I'll own it and do better. Isla's eyes glistened. That's the most honest thing you've ever said to me. I should have said it sooner. Yes, but you said it now, and that counts. She squeezed his hands. I'll try too. I'll be patient when you retreat. I'll push you when you need pushing. I'll trust you even when it's scary. And I'll believe that this can work until you give me reason not to. I won't give you reason. You might, but we'll handle it if you do. Jaxon pulled her into his arms, and Isla came willingly, curling against his chest. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other, feeling the shift from casual to committed settle around them like new gravity. So we're doing this, Isla murmured. Actual relationship. Boyfriend and girlfriend. The whole terrifying thing. Apparently. How do you feel? Scared, relieved, hopeful, all of it at once. Same. She tilted her head up to look at him. We should probably celebrate. Celebrate how? Isla's smile turned mischievous. I have some ideas. She kissed him, and Jaxon responded with enthusiasm. The conversation dissolving into physical expression of everything they'd just committed to. They made their way to Isla's bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions, rediscovering each other with the new knowledge that this was no longer temporary. Afterward, lying tangled in her sheets, Isla traced patterns on Jaxon's chest. Can I tell you something? She asked. Always. I'm really happy, scared but happy. Me too. Good, she kissed his shoulder. Because you're stuck with me now, no take-backs. Wouldn't dream of it. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. Two people who'd built walls, finally letting someone through. It felt dangerous. It felt right. Part 6, the public. Going public wasn't dramatic or ceremonial. It was small, gradual adjustments that added up to visibility. Jaxon and Isla started leaving and arriving at Aurora Heights together without carefully timing their exits. They shared the elevator without pretending to be strangers. When they passed other residents in the lobby, Jackson's hand rested casually on Isla's back, a gesture of connection that spoke volumes. Elias, the concierge, noticed immediately. Good evening, Mr. Raines, Miss Monroe, he said one evening as they returned from dinner. His expression was professionally neutral, but his eyes held amusement. I trust you had a pleasant evening. Very, Isla said warmly. Excellent. Please let me know if you need anything. As they moved toward the elevators, Jaxon glanced back. Elias caught his eye and offered the smallest of knowing smiles. He definitely knows, Jaxon murmured. Of course he knows. Elias knows everything about everyone in this building. It's his superpower. Does that bother you? Not particularly. We're not doing anything wrong. We're two adults in a consensual relationship. If people want to gossip about that, it says more about them than us. Jaxon admired her certainty. Isla had spent years navigating public scrutiny and had developed a thick skin. He was still adjusting to the idea that his private life might become conversation. Within a week, the whisper network of Aurora Heights had processed and disseminated the information. Jaxon Raines and Isla Monroe were together. Some reactions were positive. Claire texted Jaxon, "Finally, you two were painfully obvious." Others were neutral neighbors who offered polite congratulations without much interest. And some were decidedly less pleasant. Jackson's phone rang one afternoon with a number he hadn't seen in over a year. He considered ignoring it, then answered. "Hello, Jackson, it's Vanessa, his ex-girlfriend." The relationship that had ended 3 years ago in mutual frustration and resentment. "Vanessa, this is unexpected. I heard you're seeing someone, Isla Monroe. I wanted to reach out." "Why?" "To warn her, I suppose. Or warn you. I haven't decided which." Jackson's jaw tightened. "That's not necessary, isn't it? Does she know you're incapable of real commitment? That you'll make her feel special until she actually needs something, and then you'll retreat into your carefully constructed emotional fortress?" Things change, people change. Do they? Because from where I'm standing, you're doing exactly what you did with me. You'll let her in just enough to keep her interested, but the moment she expects actual partnership, you'll bail. It's what you do, Jackson. It's who you are. The words hit harder than Jackson wanted to admit, because part of him feared they were true. "I'm not having this conversation with you," he said. "Fine, but when this falls apart, and it will, don't say I didn't warn you." Vanessa hung up. Jackson sat in silence, her accusations echoing. Was he doing the same thing again? Was his commitment to Isla genuine? Or was it another performance that would collapse when tested? He didn't have answers. That evening, Isla came over to find Jackson distant, his mind clearly elsewhere. "What's wrong?" she asked, settling beside him on the sofa. Jackson considered deflecting, then remembered his promise to communicate. "Vanessa called today." "Your ex?" "Yeah. Apparently she heard we're together and wanted to share her opinions on my capacity for commitment." "Which were?" "That I don't have any. That I'll hurt you the way I hurt her. That I'm incapable of being the partner you deserve." Isla was quiet for a moment. "What do you think?" "I think she's partially right. My track record isn't great. I do retreat when things get hard. I do protect myself at others' expense sometimes. Sometimes, but not always. Not with me so far." So far being the operative phrase. Isla shifted to face him directly. "Jackson, I'm not Vanessa. I don't know what happened between you two, but I know it's not happening with us. We're different people with different needs and different communication styles. Her experience doesn't predict our outcome. But what if she's right? What if I'm fundamentally incapable of this? Then we'll find out together, and we'll handle it. But I'm not going to let your ex-girlfriend's bitterness poison what we're building. And neither should you." Jackson wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that this time could be different. But Vanessa's words had awakened old doubts, old certainties about his own limitations. "I don't want to hurt you," he said quietly. "I know, but Jackson, you're going to. Not maliciously, not intentionally, but it's inevitable. I'll hurt you too. That's what happens in relationships. People make mistakes. The question isn't whether we'll hurt each other, it's whether we'll repair the damage when we do." "How are you so calm about this?" I'm not calm. I'm realistic. I went into my marriage with unrealistic expectations that love meant never fighting, never disappointing each other, never questioning the relationship. When reality didn't match fantasy, everything fell apart. I'm not making that mistake again. I'm going into this knowing it will be hard sometimes, knowing we'll fail each other occasionally, and choosing to try anyway. Jaxon pulled her close, grateful for her groundedness, even as his own anxiety spiraled. You're better at this than I am. I've had more practice failing. It teaches humility. She kissed his jaw. Stop letting your ex live in your head. She doesn't get a vote in our relationship. You're right. I usually am. That made him smile. Modest as always. Modesty is overrated. They spent the rest of the evening deliberately not talking about Vanessa, or doubt, or fear. Instead, they cooked dinner together, argued playfully about movies, and ended up in bed doing things that required no words at all. But later, after Isla had fallen asleep beside him, Jaxon lay awake, Vanessa's warning circling his thoughts. He wanted to believe this was different, wanted to trust his own capacity for growth. But wanting and believing were different things. The real test came 3 weeks later. Isla's major fundraiser, the arts education gala she'd been planning for months, was approaching. It was the kind of high-profile event that attracted donors, press, and scrutiny in equal measure. Isla had been working 16-hour days finalizing details, and stress had made her shorter-tempered and more fragile than usual. Jaxon had offered to attend, to support her publicly, to be the partner she needed that night. But 2 days before the event, an investment opportunity surfaced. A company Jaxon had been tracking for over a year was suddenly available for acquisition. But the timeline was compressed. The key meeting was scheduled for the same night as Isla's gala. Same time, same city, impossible to do both. Jaxon stared at his calendar, torn between professional obligation and personal commitment. The investment was significant, potentially career-defining. The kind of opportunity that came once in a professional lifetime. But Isla had been planning this event for months, had explicitly asked him to be there, had told him how much his public support would mean. He couldn't do both. He had to choose. Jaxon called his business partner, Claire, hopping for an alternative solution. Can you take the meeting without me? He asked. I could, but I shouldn't. They want to meet you specifically. Your reputation is part of what's driving their interest. If you're not there, they'll interpret it as lack of commitment. What if we reschedule? They're talking to other buyers. If we delay, we lose the opportunity. Jaxon closed his eyes. How important is this, Claire? Honestly, it could set us up for the next decade. But she paused. I also know you've been happier the past few months than I've seen you in years. So I guess the question is what you're willing to sacrifice for what. After hanging up, Jaxon sat in silence, weighing options. The professional choice was obvious. Attend the meeting. Build his career. Isla would understand. She was practical, sophisticated, familiar with the demands of professional life. But understanding wasn't the same as not being hurt. Jaxon thought about their conversations, about Isla's need to matter publicly, not just privately, about his promise to show up, to try, to be all in. This was the test, the moment where promises became actions or revealed themselves as empty words. He made his decision. Then he called Isla. She answered on the second ring, sounding harried. "Hey, can I call you back? I'm dealing with a centerpiece crisis. I need to tell you something." Something in his tone made her pause. "Okay, what?" "I have a conflict. The night of your gala." Silence. Then, carefully, "What kind of conflict?" "An investment meeting. Major opportunity. Same time as your event." "I see." "Isla, are you calling to tell me you're not coming?" "No, I'm calling to tell you I'm choosing you. I'm skipping the meeting. I'll be at your gala." The silence this time felt different. "Jaxon, you don't have to do that. If this is important professionally." "It is, but you're more important. We're more important. I promised I'd be there, and I will be. This could cost you." "I know. You're sure?" "I'm sure." He heard her exhale, heard the emotion she was trying to control. "Thank you. This means more than you know." "I know. That's why I'm doing it." After they hung up, Jaxon called Claire back. "Tell them I'm unavailable," he said. "See if you can negotiate without me. If not, we'll find another opportunity." Claire was quiet for a beat. "You're choosing the girl over the deal. I'm choosing the relationship over the career." "Wow, never thought I'd see the day." "Neither did I. For what it's worth, Jaxon, I think you're making the right choice. Money comes and goes. Finding someone who actually matters is rare." The night of the gala, Jaxon put on his best suit and met Isla in the Aurora Heights lobby. She looked breathtaking in a floor-length gown, hair styled to perfection, every inch the elegant socialite. But when she saw him, her professional composure cracked slightly, and genuine emotion showed through. "You came," she said. "Of course I came. I said I would." "I know, but after the phone call, I thought you might reconsider." "This is a big sacrifice, Jaxon. You're worth it." Isla kissed him, not caring that Elias and several other residents were watching. "Okay, let's go raise some money for arts education." The gala was everything Isla had worked for: elegant, well-attended, successful. Donors were generous. Press coverage was positive. The event would fund programs for thousands of students. And through it all, Jaxon was beside her. Not just physically present, but actively engaged. He charmed donors, posed for photographs, spoke eloquently when asked about supporting the cause. He was exactly the partner Isla needed that night. Late in the evening, during a brief, quiet moment on the venue's terrace, Isla leaned against him. "Thank you for being here," she said. Thank you for letting me be here. Did you hear about the investment meeting? Claire texted earlier. They went with another buyer. Isla tensed. Jaxon, I'm so sorry. Don't be. It was my choice, and I don't regret it. Really, really, there will be other deals. There won't be another tonight. Isla turned to face him fully. I love you. The words hung between them, unexpected and enormous. Jackson's heart stuttered. What? I love you. I didn't plan to say it tonight, but it's true. And I needed you to know. He could have deflected, could have made a joke, or changed the subject, or responded with something less vulnerable. Instead, he chose honesty. I love you too. Isla's smile was radiant. Yeah, terrifyingly, completely, inconveniently, I love you. That might be the least romantic declaration I've ever heard. I'm new at this. Give me time to improve. She laughed and kissed him, and Jaxon felt something fundamental shift in his chest. The fear was still there, probably always would be, but it was joined by something stronger. Hope, certainty, the belief that maybe this time he could actually make it work. They returned to Aurora Heights after midnight, exhausted and happy. In the elevator, Isla kicked off her heels and leaned heavily against Jaxon. Successful night, he observed. Very, though I'm going to sleep for approximately 14 hours. Your place or mine? Yours. Your bed is more comfortable. They stumbled into Jackson's apartment, helping each other out of formal wear, collapsing into bed still half-dressed. Within minutes, Isla was asleep. Jaxon lay beside her, watching the city lights filter through his windows, feeling the weight of her trust in his arms. He'd made the right choice tonight. He knew that. But he also knew this was just the beginning. Relationships required continuous choosing, continuous effort, continuous showing up even when it was inconvenient. For the first time in his life, Jaxon felt ready for that challenge, because the woman sleeping beside him was worth every sacrifice, every fear, every leap of faith. She was worth trying. Part 7, The Rumor. Aurora Heights had a peculiar ecosystem. Residents prided themselves on discretion, yet gossip flowed through the building like electricity through circuits. A whispered conversation in the gym became common knowledge by evening. A late-night visitor noticed by security became next morning's speculation. Privacy was purchased, but never guaranteed. Jaxon and Isla had been together for 4 months when the rumor started. Neither knew where it originated. These things rarely had clear sources. They materialized from the collective consciousness of a building that thrived on secrets and speculation. The rumor was simple. Jaxon was cheating. Isla first heard it from a friend, another Aurora Heights resident named Simone, who lived on floor 40. They were having coffee in the building's private cafe when Simone leaned forward, expression concerned. I need to tell you something, Simone said. I debated whether to, but if I were in your position, I'd want to know. Isla's stomach tightened. Okay, there's talk about Jaxon, about him being seen with another woman. What kind of scene? Dinner multiple times. At that Italian place downtown, Marcello's. Always the same woman, brunette, late 20s, very attractive. They looked intimate. Isla forced herself to stay calm. Who's saying this? A couple of people. Residents who happened to be at the same restaurant on different occasions. I'm sorry, Isla. I hope it's nothing, but I thought you should know. After Simone left, Isla sat alone with her coffee, processing. Jaxon having dinner with a woman wasn't inherently suspicious. He had female friends, female colleagues, a female business partner. But intimate suggested something beyond professional. And the fact that he hadn't mentioned these dinners felt like an omission. Isla's first instinct was to trust him. Jaxon had been nothing but honest since they committed to each other. He'd sacrificed a major business opportunity to support her. He'd said he loved her and acted like he meant it. But her second instinct, shaped by Marcus's infidelity, was suspicion. How well did she really know Jaxon? How much of what he'd shown her was real, and how much was performance? She hated that doubt lived in her chest. Hated that Marcus had left that scar. Instead of spiraling, Isla decided to ask directly. That evening, when Jaxon arrived at her apartment for dinner, she was direct. Are you having an affair? Jaxon froze mid-step. What? Someone told me you've been seen multiple times at Marcello's with a brunette woman, looking intimate. So I'm asking, are you having an affair? No, absolutely not. His confusion seemed genuine. Who told you this? Does it matter? It does, if someone's spreading false information about me. Then explain the dinners. Jackson's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. The brunette is Rachel, my sister. Isla blinked. You have a sister? Yes, she lives in Elysium City. Has for the past 6 months. We try to have dinner every couple of weeks. You never mentioned a sister. I didn't. I thought I had. Jaxon pulled out his phone, scrolled through photos, and handed it to Isla. The image showed Jaxon with a woman who shared his features, same eyes, same smile. They had their arms around each other, clearly comfortable and familial. Isla felt foolish. I'm sorry. I should have asked before assuming. You did ask. That's the right thing to do. Jaxon took his phone back. But I need to know who's spreading this rumor because it's not innocent gossip. Someone's trying to cause problems between us. I don't know the original source. Simone just said multiple residents had mentioned seeing you. At Marcello's specifically. Yes, Jackson's jaw tightened. That's interesting. Rachel and I always go to Marcello's because it's near her apartment. Whoever started this rumor knows my patterns. They're not speculating. They're deliberately creating narrative. Why would someone do that? To break us up, to create drama, to feel powerful by manipulating other people's relationships. Take your pick. Isla settled on the sofa, suddenly exhausted. I hate that my first instinct was suspicion. Marcus ruined that for me, the ability to just trust. Jaxon sat beside her, taking her hand. He hurt you. That doesn't go away overnight. But Isla, I need you to believe me when I say I'm not Marcus. I'm not going to cheat on you. I'm not going to lie to you. If I'm unhappy or interested in someone else, I'll tell you directly. I want to believe that. Then do. Trust isn't about never having doubts. It's about choosing to believe someone despite the doubts. They sat in silence for a moment, hands intertwined. I would like to meet your sister, Isla said eventually. I'd like that too. I should have introduced you already. That's my fault. Why haven't you? Jaxon hesitated. Rachel can be protective. She watched my relationship with Vanessa implode and saw how much it hurt me. She's skeptical of anyone new. I was waiting for the right time. There's never a perfect time for difficult conversations. You taught me that. Fair point. Jaxon smiled slightly. I'll set something up, but fair warning, she will interrogate you. I look forward to it. The immediate crisis had passed, but the rumor continued to circulate. Over the following week, Isla heard variations of the story from 3 different people. Each time, she calmly explained, "Sister, not affair." Each time, she watched the disappointment on people's faces that the gossip wasn't more scandalous. Jaxon, meanwhile, tried to trace the rumor's origin. He spoke with Elias, who kept his ear to the ground better than anyone. Who's talking about me? Jaxon asked one morning in the lobby. Elias' expression remained professionally neutral. Several residents, Mr. Raines, though I suspect the original source is singular. Any idea who? Speculation only. But there's a resident on floor 28, Mr. Harris, who's recently taken an unusual interest in your affairs. He's asked me several questions about your routine, your visitors, your relationship status. Daniel Harris, I barely know him. Nevertheless, he seems quite invested in knowing you better. Jaxon remembered Daniel vaguely, a hedge fund manager, arrogant, recently divorced. They'd crossed paths occasionally at building events, but never had substantial conversation. Why would he care about my relationship? I couldn't say. But if I were you, I'd be cautious about what information he has access to. Jaxon thanked Elias and made a mental note to avoid Daniel Harris. But the following evening, Harris approached Jaxon in the building's gym. Raines, he said, stepping onto the treadmill beside Jackson's. We should talk about the fact that you and I want the same thing. Jaxon slowed his pace, which is Isla Monroe. Jaxon stopped the treadmill entirely. Excuse me. Harris smiled, unpleasant and knowing. I've been interested in Isla for months. Since before she moved to Aurora Heights. We ran in the same social circles before her divorce. I was planning to pursue her properly, and then you swooped in. Isla and I are in a relationship. There's nothing to pursue. Relationships end. especially ones built on convenience rather than substance. And you're trying to accelerate that ending by spreading false rumors. I have no idea what you're talking about. You've been telling people I'm cheating, that I'm having dinners with another woman. Harris's smile widened. Are you? Because multiple people have confirmed those dinners exist. My sister. I've been having dinner with my sister. Sure, if that's the story you're going with. Harris increased his treadmill speed, radiating false casualness. All I'm saying is that Isla deserves better than a man who can't commit. And when she realizes that, I'll be available. Jaxon felt anger spike hot and immediate. He wanted to respond physically, to wipe that smug expression off Harris's face. Instead, he chose words. Stay away from Isla, and stay away from me. Aurora Heights is a shared building, Raines. We'll inevitably cross paths. Jaxon stepped off the treadmill, then crossed paths silently. He left the gym before his temper got the better of him. That evening, he told Isla everything. Her reaction was immediate fury. He's been spreading lies to break us up. Who does that? Apparently, Daniel Harris. I barely remember him. We might have been at the same events once or twice, but I certainly never gave him any indication of interest. Doesn't matter. He's decided he wants you, and I'm in his way. Isla paced her apartment, anger radiating off her. This is exactly the kind of behavior I hate. Manipulation disguised as pursuit. Sabotage disguised as information. Men who think women are prizes to be won rather than people with agency. What do you want to do? Confront him. Make it very clear that his interest is unwelcome and his tactics are pathetic. That might escalate things. Good, let them escalate. I'm not going to let some entitled jerk interfere with my relationship because he can't handle rejection. Jaxon loved her fierceness, but worried about consequences. Aurora Heights is a small community. Making an enemy could complicate things. I don't care. Some principles are worth the complication. The confrontation happened 2 days later in the building's lobby. Isla saw Harris collecting his mail and approached with Jaxon beside her. Mr. Harris, she said, voice cold and clear. We need to talk. Harris turned, surprise quickly masked by his usual smugness. Ms. Monroe, Mr. Raines, how can I help you? You can stop spreading false rumors about my boyfriend. And you can abandon whatever fantasy you've constructed about pursuing me. I have no idea. Don't insult my intelligence. We know you've been telling people Jaxon is cheating. We know you're hopping to undermine our relationship. It's transparent, pathetic, and completely ineffective. Several other residents had paused, openly watching. Harris's expression darkened. You're making accusations you can't prove, he said. I don't need to prove them. I just need you to understand that I'm not interested in you, will never be interested in you, and would appreciate you respecting that boundary. Your relationship won't last. When it ends, if it ends, that's still none of your concern. "Leave us alone, Mr. Harris. This is your only warning." Isla turned and walked away, Jaxon following. Behind them, Harris stood in humiliated silence while other residents whispered. In the elevator, Isla was shaking slightly, adrenaline, not fear. "That felt good," she said. "You were magnificent. Was I too harsh?" "No, you were exactly harsh enough." The rumor died quickly after that. Whether from Isla's public confrontation or simple exhaustion of the gossip cycle, people stopped mentioning Jaxon's supposed infidelity. Harris avoided both of them completely, which suited everyone. But the incident left marks. That evening, curled together on Jaxon's sofa, Isla was quiet. "What are you thinking?" Jaxon asked. "That this won't be the last challenge. People will continue to have opinions about us, to create obstacles, to test whether we're solid. Probably, and I'm wondering if we're strong enough to withstand that. If what we have is resilient or just hopeful." Jaxon turned to face her. "What do you think?" "I think we're strong, but I also think strength requires maintenance. We can't just assume we'll be fine. We have to actively protect what we've built." "Agreed. So how do we do that?" Isla considered. "Honesty, communication, choosing each other even when it's difficult, and not letting outside voices matter more than our own." "I can do all of that." "So can I." They sealed the commitment with a kiss, then another, then more, until conversation became impossible and unnecessary. Later, as Isla slept beside him, Jaxon thought about resilience, about the difference between relationships that crumbled under pressure and ones that strengthened because of it. He and Isla were building something real. Imperfect, occasionally difficult, but real. And for the first time in his life, Jaxon believed it might actually last. Part 8, The Resolution. 6 months into their relationship, Jaxon and Isla had established routines that felt like permanence, disguised as casualness. They alternated apartments each night, never explicitly discussing moving in together, but functionally living as a unit. Morning coffee on whichever balcony had better light. Evening meals prepared together, a collaboration of Jaxon's efficiency and Isla's creativity. Weekend mornings in the rooftop garden, watching the city wake up while wrapped in comfortable silence. It was domestic without feeling trapped, committed without feeling suffocating. Exactly what both of them needed, but permanence had a way of demanding acknowledgement. The conversation started innocuously. On a Sunday afternoon, while they were assembling furniture for Isla's guest room. "My lease is up in 2 months, Isla mentioned, holding a bookshelf panel while Jaxon attached brackets. "Are you renewing?" "I don't know. The apartment's fine, but I'm barely here anymore. Seems wasteful to pay for space I'm not using." Jaxon's hands paused mid-motion. "What's the alternative?" "I could move out of Aurora Heights." "No, just consolidate, save money, simplify logistics." She wasn't quite saying it, But the implication was clear. Jaxon set down his tools. Are you suggesting we move in together? Isla met his eyes. I'm suggesting it's worth discussing. We're already functionally cohabitating. Making it official would just be acknowledging reality. That's very pragmatic. Is that a criticism? No, just an observation. Jaxon sat back on his heels, processing. Moving in together is significant. It's not just logistics. It's commitment. It's saying this is long-term, maybe permanent. I know, does that scare you? A little, does it scare you? A little, Isla admitted. But I'm also excited. I like the idea of building a shared space, of our lives being intertwined intentionally rather than accidentally. Jaxon thought about his apartment, about the careful preservation of independence he'd maintained for years, about how Isla's presence had transformed the space from sterile to alive. If we did this, he said slowly, we'd need to do it right. Not just you moving into my space, or me moving into yours. Something that feels like ours. Your place or mine. Neither bigger. We'd need an actual 2-bedroom, one for sleeping, one for office space. You have your charity work. I have my investments. We both need dedicated work areas. So we're talking about finding a new apartment in Aurora Heights, if one's available. I like this building. We know the ecosystem, but only if it feels like a shared choice, not me imposing my preference. Isla smiled. I like the building too, and I like the idea of starting fresh, creating something together instead of one person accommodating the other. Then let's look, see what's available. If something works, we'll take it. They spent the next 2 weeks exploring Aurora Heights' available units. There weren't many. The building's low turnover was part of its appeal. But eventually, Elias informed them that a penthouse on floor 45 would be vacating. It's larger than your current apartments, Elias explained. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, dual balconies with northern and western exposure. Quite spectacular. They toured the space the following day. It was perfect. Floor-to-ceiling windows flooded the apartment with natural light. The master bedroom was spacious without being cavernous. The 2 additional rooms could serve as office and guest space. The kitchen was modern and functional, and the balconies, one overlooking the city's financial district, one offering sunset views, felt like private retreats. This is it, Isla said, standing in the empty living room, already visualizing their furniture, their life, their future. You're sure? Jaxon asked. Completely, you. Jaxon looked around the space, imagining mornings here with Isla, evenings entertaining friends, quiet nights just being. The fear he'd expected, the claustrophobic panic of commitment, was absent. I'm sure. They signed the lease that week. Moving happened gradually over a month. Combining households required negotiation. Whose furniture to keep, whose to donate, how to merge aesthetics without compromising either person's taste. They argued about minor things: Isla's insistence on excessive throw pillows, Jackson's attachment to a truly hideous lamp, and agreed easily on major ones: neutral paint colors, investment in quality over quantity, maintaining individual spaces within the shared environment. By the time they officially moved in, the apartment felt like theirs, a hybrid of Isla's elegant taste and Jackson's minimalist preferences. Comfortable, beautiful, and uniquely suited to their life together. The first night in their new home, they ordered takeout and ate sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes. "This is nice," Isla said, leaning against Jaxon, eating on the floor, surrounded by chaos. "No, building a life with you." Jaxon kissed the top of her head. "I never thought I'd want this. Shared space, shared life, all of it." "What changed?" You made commitment feel like freedom instead of a trap." "That might be the most romantic thing you've ever said to me." "I'm evolving." They finished their food in comfortable silence, then spent the evening unpacking essentials and christening their new bedroom with enthusiasm and laughter. Later, lying tangled in sheets that smelled like new beginnings, Isla traced patterns on Jackson's chest. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "Do you ever think about marriage?" Jaxon stilled. "In general or specifically regarding us?" "Both," he considered carefully. Marriage had always felt like the ultimate commitment, the thing he'd been most certain he didn't want. But his certainty had shifted on many things. "I think about it sometimes," he admitted. "Not in a we need to get married way, just in a maybe this wouldn't be terrible way." Isla laughed, still the romantic. "I'm serious. Marriage doesn't scare me the way it used to, but I also don't feel like we need it. We're committed. We live together. We've built something real. A piece of paper doesn't change that." "I agree, though there are legal and financial benefits." "Are you proposing to me, Isla Monroe?" "Not currently, but I reserve the right to in the future." "Noted and accepted for the record." "You'd say yes." Jaxon turned to face her fully. "If you asked me to marry you right now, I'd say yes. Not because I need marriage, but because I want you. In whatever form that takes." Isla's eyes glistened. "You can't just say things like that." "Why not?" "Because they make me feel things. Good things, I hope. Very good things." She kissed him, slow and deep. "I love you, Jaxon Raines." "I love you too." They made love again, slower this time, savoring the knowledge that this was their home, their space, their life. Afterward, as Isla drifted toward sleep, Jaxon stayed awake a while longer. He thought about the man he'd been a year ago, commitment phobic, emotionally guarded, certain that relationships were traps to be avoided. He thought about how Isla had changed everything, not by demanding he change, but by making him want to. Growth, Jaxon realized, wasn't about becoming someone different. It was about becoming more honest about who you already were. And with Isla, he'd learned to be honest about wanting love, wanting partnership, wanting something beyond the safety of solitude. It had been terrifying. It had been worth it. Epilogue. 1 year later, Floor 45 had become home in the truest sense. Jaxon and Isla had settled into a rhythm that balanced independence and togetherness. They maintained separate work schedules, separate social commitments, separate identities. But they always came back to each other, to morning coffee on the balcony, to evenings recounting their days, to the particular intimacy that came from choosing each other daily. Their relationship wasn't perfect. They argued occasionally about money, about time management, about whose turn it was to handle various household responsibilities. But they'd learned to argue productively, to listen without defensiveness, to repair damage quickly instead of letting resentment fester. They'd met each other's families. Jackson's sister, Rachel, had interrogated Isla thoroughly before declaring her approval. Isla's parents, initially skeptical about her dating so soon after divorce, had warmed to Jackson's genuine affection for their daughter. Professionally, both were thriving. Isla's nonprofit work had expanded significantly, earning recognition and funding. Jackson's investments continued to perform well, though he'd learned to balance professional ambition with personal priorities. And Aurora Heights, which had brought them together, continued to serve as the backdrop for their life. They still encountered Daniel Harris occasionally in shared spaces. He maintained his distance, though his expressions carried lingering resentment. They ignored him. Elias, the ever-observant concierge, had become something like a friend. He kept them informed about building gossip, warned them about potential drama, and occasionally joined them for coffee when his schedule allowed. Other residents had accepted them as a permanent fixture. The couple on floor 45, Jaxon and Isla, solid, stable, enviably content. One evening, almost exactly a year after moving in together, they were hosting a small dinner party. Friends from various parts of their lives, Isla's nonprofit colleagues, Jackson's business associates, shared acquaintances from Aurora Heights. The apartment buzzed with conversation and laughter. Isla moved through the space like a natural hostess, ensuring everyone had drinks and felt included. Jaxon watched her, still occasionally struck by how much she'd changed his life. Later, after guests had departed and they were cleaning up, Isla found a small box on the kitchen counter. "What's this?" she asked. Jaxon turned from loading the dishwasher. "Open it." Inside was a ring. Not an engagement ring. The design was too unique for that traditional purpose. It was silver, elegant, with a small inscription inside. "Choose me, and I'll choose you." Isla looked up, confused and emotional. "Jaxon, it's not a proposal," he said quickly. "Well, not a marriage proposal. It's a commitment ring. A promise that I choose you every day in every way that matters. If you want marriage in the future, we'll do that. If you don't, we won't. Either way, this is me saying I'm all in. Permanently. Isla's hands shook as she slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. I choose you too, she said, every day, every way. They stood in their kitchen, surrounded by the evidence of a life built together. And kissed like it was the first time, and the 1,000th time simultaneously. Outside, Elysium City glittered against the night sky. Aurora Heights rose above it all, a monument to secrets and desires, power and passion. Inside its walls, lives intersected and diverged, loves bloomed and burned, dreams were realized and destroyed. But on floor 45, in an apartment filled with laughter and light, two people who had never expected to find each other had built something rare. Not perfect, not easy, but real, honest, worth every risk. And that, they both knew, was more than enough.